Hello and welcome to another episode of Casual Friday. I'm here with the Duck, and crypto personalities just can't stop getting arrested, Don. I don't know what it is about. Maybe it's the time of the year, we've got a full moon, something of that nature. But every time I open Twitter, it feels like there's been a new arrest. But that aside, before we delve into why DonAlt's going to be the next one, given his bearish flip-flopping, the show is brought to you by Woo. Links available in the description below. It's a centralized trading exchange. Don't keep more funds there than you need for trading. But if you want to compare your trading venue to others, there's an execution dashboard you can see on the website. And just in general, if you want to try out the platform, let us know, click around, and we can provide feedback directly to the team. Thank you to them for supporting the show. Leave a like on this video if you enjoy Casual Friday. Thank you for the subscriptions and all the support recently. I'm going to shut up and get into the content. So, Don, you've had no shortage of things to say on Twitter, at least, about the market. I think you were long BCH of all things after spending 2 weeks telling people that longing altcoins is retarded. So that was definitely encouraging. And then, God forbid, we started to go up. That's when you started fudding on the timeline because our narratives weren't good enough. So can you stop the bullying and maybe try to be agreeable at least for once? Or is that completely out of the question?
No, it's completely out of the question.
Fair enough.
No, I mean, what I said was that ETH wasn't really a good bet because it's not stupid enough, basically. So if you're gonna take an altcoin bet, might as well take a really dumb one, and BCH seemed to fit that narrative quite well. So that's why I bought it. Worked out quite well at the end of the day. I mean, quite well. It's like a 10% move is what I captured at the end, which is nothing in crypto land. So
Yeah, but use the 100x leverage responsibly, right? So it's
of
much
course,
more than
of course. I mean, I went to other venues and did 1000x, and
nice.
now I'm giga rich.
Same, definitely same. So BCH, fair enough. Was that just like an outlier strength thing as opposed to something that shifted your view on altcoins more broadly, presumably?
Yeah, I mean, it's the only altcoin that really looks good in my opinion. Like the Bitcoin Cash Bitcoin chart still is one of the best looking charts around, I think. Because I mean, I always compare the altcoins that I'm interested in trading versus Bitcoin because it just makes sense to me, right? Like if they're bearish against Bitcoin, I'd just rather buy Bitcoin. So if I find something, especially in a bear market like this one, that looks good against Bitcoin, sometimes I like to take a punt. This one just screamed at me that I was gonna go up in the next few days, and it did. So I was just like, okay, I think Bitcoin's at a decent spot. Bitcoin Cash looks great against Bitcoin, so let's take a bet. I did, and I actually wish I had good reason to hold it longer because I think the setup allows for much more. But the whole narrative shifted so quickly on Twitter again. Like Bitcoin just needed to go up 1 or 2%, and then everything got really stupid really fast again. And given we're in the PvP market, I'd rather just not be on that side. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna take those 10% that I made and walk off and come back when it makes more sense again. So right now, I don't know. It seems PvP seems all the way up to resistance, especially on the Bitcoin part. Yeah, it's a little bit more tough now.
When you said it got stupid, what in particular?
Oh, the whole ETH talk, right? Like this is something we talked on the show for quite a while now, with the whole with the ETH ETF, like futures ETF coming.
Yes.
Like we talked about this for weeks, and I outlined my thoughts like weeks and weeks ago that if we ever got a pump, based on that narrative, that I would sell, right? Like, do you remember that? I'm pretty sure I mentioned it on
Something
the
of
show.
that nature, yes.
And well, I hold my position, go to sleep happily, thinking, okay, we're gonna get more upside, and then I wake up, open Twitter, and the first 20 posts are all about the ETF coming and how great that is. I'm just like, wow, this is just dumb. And I look at ETH, and ETH's up like 1% or 2%, which is nothing in the grand scheme of things. But I already had like 10 people in my mentions being like, "Ha, you idiot! You've been telling me not to buy altcoins, and ETH is up 2 or 3% now." And I'm just like, okay, this is just stupid. I'll take this as a clue that I'm just like mispositioned, and that I'm taking on too much risk. So I sold. Kind of how it went. I could regret that. Like I said, the setup of Bitcoin Cash I still really like, but yeah, I just felt the need to close stuff and just walk away for a while.
Fair enough. Okay, that makes sense. There was presumably some technical confluence to it as well, because you tweeted out there was a retest of the same cluster on the BTC
Yes.
daily. So was it the case that you start getting sort of narratively sentiment worried and you look at a chart and think, well, this doesn't, I mean, this complements my caution as opposed to contradicts it?
I mean, if you go on the Bitcoin daily chart, right,
Yeah.
we're right back at that like cluster of resistance, and I honestly usually wouldn't care about it too much, given we've tested it twice before. This is the third test, so like I don't mind holding position through resistance from time to time, right? But what I don't like is if the market pushes into resistance on basically bullshit news, in my eyes, like on the bullshit narrative, because bullshit narratives kind of unwind really fast, and this is kind of like a bullshit narrative to me. So I was like, it's at resistance. I don't like the kind of narrative that is assigned to this, and I generally don't like how the market is trading right now. So I'm just gonna close. Doesn't have to, like, I'm not too bearish right now. I actually like how the weekly looks for the first time in quite a while, but it's not enough right now, so I'll just chill.
Yeah, I just want to clarify in terms of bullshit narrative. Is it essentially some version of the market is overreacting to non-news in ETH and BTC is being dragged up as a result?
Exactly. Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah,
And
because
then
this is the thing, right? The futures ETF isn't like a new development per se,
no,
because we've had ETH futures, like on the CME and stuff, got approved ages ago as a sort of institutional product. So like an ETF around that isn't terribly surprising, right? You're just deploying a strategy based around a very well-regulated product, and it's futures. Bitcoin futures came out like what 3 years ago? No, even longer, 2018. Like, sorry, 5 years ago.
Yep.
Time moves way too quickly in crypto. So that's when Bitcoin futures came out. Then
And
ETH
that-
futures were a bit later. And you just have a strategy around a regulated product. Whereas the whole controversy, or I guess what makes the spot ETF interesting, is that we don't have a sort of a regulated crypto spot product of the same nature, right? Certainly not a spot ETF. And the reason that futures ETFs are so inferior to spot ETFs is because they are just less efficient and more costly. You need to roll over the futures, and they just do a worse job at tracking the product as opposed to something spot based. But also because it's spot based, there's like not a different legal requirement, but basically because the futures aren't controversial. So okay, this product exists, it's regulated, fine, it's on the CME, whatever. The debate going on with regard to the spot ETF is basically, is there enough oversight in the spot market for there to be sort of, to adhere to market transparency rules, have all this sort of clarity, so on and so forth. Whereas you're not going to have that issue with like a CME product, right? There's no question as to whether a CME product is like sufficiently transparent and regulated, etc. But if you're talking about global crypto spot markets, it's a much more difficult argument to make. So that's essentially, at least in my view, why the spot ETF stuff is still very impactful, especially the BTC one. Whereas the ETH futures ETF, I kind of feel like that should have been old news, but the market disagrees. So that's the spiel there.
I think it's basically a bunch of people not understanding that there's a difference. And I also think in general, like, people just forget how the Bitcoin future ETFs went, right? Because if you map them out on the chart, it doesn't paint a good picture. We've had most of the Bitcoin future ETFs came out at the pico tops of the market, right? We had one in 2018 that ended the bull market basically. Then we had another one basically 2021, if I remember correctly, also pretty close to the top. It's just generally not the best track record. So I'm very confused, because I would think, right, and this is something that says more about all of this than like the news itself. Like, when you have something like this in a bear market, you would expect people to look back in time, like if they have bear market PTSD and they're like, oh shit, like this marks the tops, right? Like they're like, oh, the Bitcoin ETFs, the Bitcoin future ETFs, they led to price moving down. So this is actually not good news. And that should be like, that's what I would like to see for something like this, like for news like this, where people are very, very doubtful and kind of like hating on it. But what I see instead is just people are excited, and it doesn't really like it's non-news if and like at best in my opinion. So it kind of like the whole sentiment there is a little bit messed up. I'd rather have it different. Could just be me, could just be my bubble, but like I usually follow decently smart people at least. And even there, I saw like a bunch of this whole narrative. Yeah, ETF is gonna go up because of this, and that's I don't like it. Makes me a little bit uneasy. But yeah, I could be wrong. Like this could lead to the bull market, but history has shown us that so far that's just not been the case. And yeah, I don't think that's gonna change anything. Like if it's gonna change anything, it's gonna be getting people liquidated to the downside. Because if we go up from here, we would have gone up regardless. But if we go down, I think there's gonna be a little bit more liquidity there, just because people are gonna get wrecked on their stupid positioning. That's kind of how I think about.
Do you think the market is that inefficient though to think that the futures ETF is like some proxy spot approval equivalent sort of commingling of headlines type of thing? Like, is it that bad?
I actually like it's very hard to say, but I think so. Yeah,
Oh
I
God,
mean,
that'd be terrible.
I mean, you
Walmart Litecoin partnership 2.0.
Yeah, I mean, what you saw, right? When we had this run up that from the 12th of September all the way up to the 19th of September, that was basically Sailor buying, right? Like he was painting the chart. He didn't even buy that much. So like it doesn't take much to move the market either direction right now. So I think this kind of like very shitty narrative can easily cause a price movement like yesterday. Because at the end of the day, we were chilling at mid range and now we're at range high, just because of that one candle. And yeah, I don't think it takes much to move the market. And this is one narrative where people are happy to do something. And I think when it's a shit narrative, that those kind of gains erase quite quickly.
That would be unfortunate. I'll say that much. But yeah, we should probably take a look at some charts as opposed to rambling on. Although that part is always fun. As far as BTC goes, so with the monthly closes in a day and 9 hours, it still looks like we're going to close the monthly below 27.2, or at least as unless it pumps in the next day, it'll just look like a close around resistance. So that's not an amazing look. The counter argument to that is some version of seasonality cope, which is basically that September has almost always been red. And so this month it hasn't been. So this time is different because the market is so much stronger. Whereas October is usually a strong month for Bitcoin historically with that limited sample size. And so we're going to full send it. Now, the counter argument to that, of course, is inverse seasonality season, where the shit month of September is green and then the good month of October is going to be red type of thing. I didn't put too much weight into this. It's just kind of narrative stuff floating around. But purely TA-wise on the monthly, I think the minimum you'd need for this time frame to support a bullish case would be above 27.2. And we're kind of fighting for our life in this last day. And any other meta commentary on the monthly?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to close poorly. I don't think we're going to get a massive move in the next 30 hours. Just doesn't seem likely. I mean, I could be wrong, but this is just going to close poorly, I think. It's not super bearish, but it's definitely not bullish. More on the bearish side.
What about October, bro? Best month, bro.
It's October.
October.
But yeah, I don't know. Like the reason why I closed my positions is because I feel like I just don't know. I feel that my gut feeling is we're gonna go lower. Okay. My brain is saying this could go either way, and the most likely is chop. Right? I look at the monthly chart and it just looks choppy, and I think that's probably gonna be the name of the game for quite a while. Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. So that's the monthly time frame. I don't think there's anything else to... I mean, look, how long realistically can we wait for the better monthly levels, right? The answer is a long time, if necessary. Yes. And those are down at like 23 and 20, as we've covered ad nauseam, and sort of 35 to 38-ish. And everything else is middle middling, whatever. Probably middle diddling is more appropriate. Not that any of those are appropriate, but out of those two. And yeah, that's really it on the monthly time frame. Don't want to read too much into it. I feel like sometimes with time frames, you really need to pick your spots, because if you get bored, because if the market isn't trading at your levels, you kind of start hallucinating levels, or at least ascribing importance to far less important levels just because they're there. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I've noticed that's like a real effect. Like if you start running out of patience to wait for your spots to trade on a given time frame, if you get bored enough, you'll just make yourself believe that some levels are much more significant than they are in reality. So that's kind of something I want to avoid personally when it comes to the monthly. Like I'm happy with 27.2 up to 30k. You know, there's a weekly and daily levels as well. But realistically, you're not going to get any really high conviction monthly signals in the sort of around the 30k area, because that's just not where the high time frame monthly levels are, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah. 100% agree.
You did say that you like the look of the weekly, though, Don. I'm wondering why that is. Is it one of those cluster bottom reclaim things? Is it the fact that we're pumping after a bearish retest rejection candle? What's kind of the saving grace of the weekly?
So like the weekly, I mean, it is at resistance, right? So take whatever I said with a grain of salt. It is at resistance. We've tested that resistance quite a bunch of times. So that's something. That is good. I think the more often you test out resistance, the more likely it is to break. And the thing that I actually like, and not enough to be bullish, but the thing that I like is these, like, we had these 3 candles to the downside, and then we had 1 green candle, and then we started to walk down again after that green candle, but very, very slowly, right? And if you compare this to kind of historical bottoms that we put in, it's actually something that happens quite often, where you get like a little bit of a grind, then you get a tiny pump that retraces most of it, and then it goes sideways again for a while. And that's where the actual move starts. And this is kind of how it looks like right now, where we've had a little bit of downside, a little bit of grinding down. You can just compare it to basically the 14th or the 21st of November in 2022, right? And then you had a huge new candle, then you had a little bit of sideways, a little bit of grinding into the bottom, and you had 1 green candle that was not really big, and then you had 4 downwards candles that couldn't erase that green candle. And if that's something that we get again here, it just kind of reminds me of that price action. It's something that Bitcoin likes to do at bottoms. So that's what I like. What I don't like is obviously it's at resistance. It's at support. Like you could make the same argument about the support that we're grinding into support that we've tested a million times. Not the best look, right? So depending on which camp you want to be in, you will find ample kind of arguments for or against whatever you want to believe in, which is problematic, right? And I can see that it's basically like I want to be bullish, so I look at this and I'm like, oh, this looks like it's looked before at bottoms. But then if you want to be bearish, you could also be like, hey, this is a support that's been tested a million times. It's very clearly too weak to push for resistance. So like I'm on the fence, but I like to look more than I liked it like a week or 2 ago. Is what I'm gonna say, but it's tough.
Yeah, this area, there's just a lot of fuckery in between like 27 to 29. It feels like on the weekly time frame that cluster is a bit of a nuisance. One mental heuristic that I like to apply when kind of trying to balance arguments is basically if I took the trade that I want to trade, that I want to take rather, and I get immediately stopped out, how stupid would I feel? And I find that helps my decision making at least a little bit. Because if it's like a really good trade, like objectively plus EV, whatever that means, or like you're trading one of your good setups, even if you get immediately stopped out, you shouldn't really feel bad about that if you're viewing it fairly and from a sort of process-oriented perspective. Whereas if you're trading like a prick, and you know when you're trading like a prick in most cases,
oh yes,
and you get immediately stopped out, you know when you look at it and sort of maybe delete all the 1 second charts and actually review what you've done, you feel stupid a lot of the time because you know better. So that can be that's like a random tangent, but just in terms of useful exercises to do, if you're trying to assess the arguments or even assess whether you should be doing business somewhere or taking a setup, it's like, how stupid will I feel if I get stopped out immediately, like after getting filled? If the answer is not very, I'd do it again. It's probably from a process point of view, a good setup. If it's, oh yeah, well, it was obvious that was going to happen, then I guess maybe pick your spots a bit differently. I agree on the weekly. This area is just really tricky. I think the earliest the weekly time frame could start to look sort of constructive would be a weekly close above 26.8-ish, which is basically the bottom of your cluster. And then you've got something at least, there's last week's high and then the other side of it at 28k. That would be something at least. But if the monthly closes below and the weekly closes below, it's really hard to make bullish high time frame arguments, I think. Which leads us to the daily, which we've kind of discussed in passing. Is it still daily cluster maximalism? Like, we've tested it a few times, but we're still there. Above 27.4, stuff starts to get a bit more interesting. Daily break in market structure. You can make a case for the dip in the last few days being a higher low, so on and so forth, cascading to higher timeframes. But it feels like below that, it's a very tricky area to do business. For all we know, this could just be a lower high relative to the last high, into an area of monthly resistance and all this other stuff. So I don't think the daily's super clear. I find it quite confusing, at least from a purely technical point of view, where it bottomed. I was looking for other levels, frankly, and I could start after the fact drawing different sort of price horizontals and saying, oh, well, this was actually a deviation and this got reclaimed. But it kind of feels like it was a sailor buy rescue pump type of thing, which he quite likes doing as well. So I'm not going to read into the daily technicals too much, aside from the daily cluster. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on board with that. When you think about it, right, this is the actual first somewhat legitimate test of this resistance, because the previous one was sailor buying into it, right? Which I would not really call organic demand, whatever that is whatever that means. But basically, by him buying, he forced it into that resistance. And the one before that was news based, right? What was it again? I forgot.
I think the original one was grayscale, right?
Yes,
the
exactly.
29th of August one, yeah.
Exactly. And then you had news that immediately retraced, then you had sailor buying that immediately retraced, and now what I would argue, and this is why I'm not so happy about the daily, is now you have the ETF ETH futures rumors, whatever, floating around.
Misunderstanding in your view.
Yes. It's very likely to pass, yes, but I think it's a nothing burger, and I think it's basically the third time we push into a resistance on bullshit, with bullshit that is pushing it up. Don't like that, especially given that all of these pushes get weaker and weaker each time. Not a fan. That's why I want to see us close above it, and if we close above it, as in above 27.4, then we can have a whole argument about it, and I can be convinced. But right now, I look at this and I'm just not a fan. It just takes a sneeze from the S&P at this point, and people tend to forget. Every time the S&P has 1 or 2 green days, people are okay, it's back now, but it's still in an area of high time frame kind of a resistance, or in general high time frame where you'd think it would start ranging or start struggling in general. So you have that situation going. It's just not great. I want to see some strength from crypto alone, and we haven't had that.
Should title the episode The Great Ethereum Misunderstanding, or something dramatic like that, like the title of a book.
Oh, dude, I had so many people link me and be like, "Hey, how are you, idiot? You were talking bearish about ETH," and it's so odd. We've been bearish ETH for what feels like a year now, and then you have one green week and you get people going after you. It's very, very odd. But that's
your mentions are worse than mine. Mine are lol, do you even trade, you suck, post a chart, and I just kind of enjoy that, whereas yours are every single reflection of a market view that they find offensive or disagree with ends up right in your mentions, which is less fun.
I also have all the bag holders in my mentions. Literally, the Hex guys, every time Hex moves 10%, I get 5 mentions, haha, you idiot, you're so wrong. And then it dumps 50% and they're quiet, and then it moves 5% again and they're all over me again. And this is not the only coin. There's so many. I had Link for years. Link was every time it pumped, people went after me again. And I was what the fuck? The only thing that I do about with these coins, I don't even short them, right? I'm just I don't like it, and that's it. Like, I don't like this. To me, it's just not that great. And for some reason, it's very offensive. And
Or
then
just
after
not caring is offensive, which is even weirder, right? It's
oh
like, I
yeah,
don't really trade this. I don't care too much. It's like, no, that's not good enough. It
yeah,
deserves your
that's
attention and only your bullish attention. It's the only thing that's satisfactory, which is not great.
that's the case with the Obama, Sonic, Inu, Harry Potter, whatever thing.
Yeah, Harry Potter,
Um,
Obama, Sonic, 10 Inu or something.
yeah. I mean, I like on stream, like I've only like said like somewhat nice things about them. I think like it's retarded, but I think that I mean that's what they want to be, right? But I made one comment that like their whole like attitude on Twitter is just like not that good. Like whenever I see like a bunch of people like going after someone or being in the comments and posting like 100 pictures, I'm just gonna assume it's bots, or like mentally deranged people, which I don't find bullish, right? And then ever since I made that comment, it's been non-stop. It's been non-stop. And it's funny because I actually originally like it was my favorite meme coin. I just hate meme coins in general, but it was my favorite one out of them all. And now I'm just kind of like, I mean, even if I liked it before, I'm most definitely not gonna like it anymore. But yeah, it's what it is. At the end of the day, I don't really care. Like if it goes up or down, whatever, who cares? But that is very outrageous indeed. For some reason.
Yeah, people just like project their own market views onto other people in it. Yeah, I mean, we've kind of talked about this before, but
Yes.
not everyone has to trade the same way as you do or care about the same coins, or not everyone who, like, if you're not long something doesn't mean you're short it, like it's not one or the other. There is such a thing as apathy. Like, I don't care about your coin, it's not on my watch list, I'm not trading it.
And
yeah.
I mean, I have that with almost everything in crypto, right? So it's
by
like
definition.
Everyone in crypto is just fucking hating me at one. Like every time I flip my bias, like the other side is just fucking furious with me, which is, I mean, I don't mind too much. It's just interesting to see. It's an experience hanging out on Twitter.
To be honest, that was one of the YouTube comments I really enjoyed last week. There was a gentleman who said, after telling us alts are shit for like 3 weeks, Don bought BCH type of thing, which I found really on the nose. And then the other one was when you said, oh, I only bought the bottom and sold the top. And they said it goes alongside other classics like I Live in a Castle and I'm on the leaderboard and all this other stuff. It's like, it's great. People are keeping receipts and I'm here for it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it is what it is. At the end
it is what it, yeah. I said if you take like Don's humble bragging and subtract my self-deprecating humor, you end up around break even. So it's not a bad deal overall on the show.
Yeah. I mean, you have to have the extremes, right? Otherwise, it's boring.
Correct. I think it's boring anyway because we just do BTC and ETH. But hey, people watch, so thank you if that's still you listening to that. On the altcoin front, though, it has been. I mean, if you want evidence that we're in a bear market, Don, it's Link is outperforming everything and is doing its own thing. So this is just like 2018, or that was 2018, right? 2018, 2019?
2018, 2019.
Yeah, like I've got the Velo price changes, one week price changes over the large caps, and they're all like 5 to minus 1% in a pretty tight range. And then Link is just in its own universe, up 15% in the past week. Yeah. So when are you joining the Link? When are you enlisting in the Link Marines?
I mean, people have been asking me about Link for like 3 or 4 weeks now. Kudos to whoever did that, because 3 or 4 weeks ago, Link, it was actually like just literally at range low. Didn't look that great, but I actually only had bullish things to say. I was like, this is a better looking altcoin. Like if you want to buy altcoins, might as well buy Link, and it's been up since then. I didn't buy, so there's no cloud in this for me, and I'm not necessarily planning on buying, but it's one of the few coins that I actually like the look of it. Both on Link BTC, like if you go on the weekly on Link BTC, that bounced from support. Support was the 23rd of May, kind of weekly candle. Bounced quite nicely. This is actually something we talked on the Wednesday show about. And Link USD bounced from range low, is at range high, tested at range high a million times. So this is one of the ones where, like, if you bought the range low, this is not something where you have to take profit at range high, in my opinion. Like, just looking at the Link USD chart, right? I don't know how you feel about it, but this is not necessarily screaming to me like, hey, take profit at range high. It's basically tested at 20 times. So at some point you can aim for the candle that kind of breaks this out of the range. And I think this isn't necessarily the worst spot to do it. As long as you can bear kind of taking a full round trip, because if it does what the range has been doing for months and months, then it's probably going to go down again. But for me, like whenever, like if I bought the low, I would not sell into range high, more likely than not, because
we can add that to the list of Don's trading advice: sell support, buy resistance, don't sell the range high if it's in a range. Like there's some cult classics in there.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think sometimes, and this is something that I wouldn't necessarily ever say in traditional markets, but in crypto, like if this breaks the range, right, where does it go? And the answer is like it goes to like $13-14, and then that expansion is worth so much more than just basically the range profit. But it's terrible advice in almost every other market. So like for crypto, like I will kind of, and I trade like this too, like where I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna hold through resistance, because you basically you have profit of like 10-20% in the range, and then if the range is broken, you suddenly make 50-100%, which just makes holding into resistance sometimes worth it. But obviously it depends on the trading style. Like this is not necessarily
as someone allergic to breakout
everyone...
trading, you might have that's kind of the trade-off there, right? Because you're not going to buy the breakout, so the only way you get on board is by buying it low, and your entry giving you enough buffer so that if it does break out and comes back on you, you're still okay.
Yes, basically. It's basically because I'm too stupid to breakout trade.
Many such cases. I think our entire 2017, 2018, 2019 generation is terrible at breakout trading, because we had like two solid years of some of the worst price action, which was entirely mean reverting, and it's pretty hard to unshake that. Yeah. When we talk about bear market PTSD, it's not just like a lazy big influencer telling you not to trade while you try to get better at it. It's because it's very hard to unteach some of those habits, especially if those habits are the ones that cost you when you can least afford it, which is when the market's frothy and active, etc. I'm a terrible breakout trader as well, but getting better slowly but surely. Not in these conditions, but in terms of like the toolkit required, I feel like I do better, if that makes sense. Any other altcoins on your radar? I mean, apart from Link and some of the mid-cap stuff has also been popping off. I mean, BCH is definitely up there in the list. I feel like there's a small low-cap alt season of sorts that Twitter's been talking about a bit. Maker was still doing Maker things with its real-world asset meme. Magic, Curve, now that the debt's been paid off, and the usual do your own research, not financial advice, funding rates tweets from DWF Labs with TRB and some other coins. So it's a bit more active than in the last few weeks. There's that much at least. But outside of those strong performers like your Links, like your BCHs, and then your low caps, is there anything else that has your attention? The Litecoin halving might kick in soon. Are you paying attention to that one?
I mean, I for fun, I look at Litecoin from time to time, and it's not looking as terrible as I expected it to, but it still looks horrendous. So that's not something I'm going to touch again. I expected it to just basically go towards new lows immediately. So far, at least on the Litecoin Bitcoin pair, so far it's barely holding above it, but that's probably just a matter of time. So no, Litecoin definitely not. One that I like to look of it is Aave. Like that's not too bad. On the weekly chart, Aave USD, it's just basically in a descending triangle. Obviously a bearish pattern, but that's bear market for you. But if that starts breaking out, I think it starts looking quite decent as well. So that's one to add to the list.
If it stops looking bearish, it'll look bullish.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it looks so bearish. It looks so bearish that if it doesn't break down, it has to be bullish.
that's one. Yeah, that's one way to do it.
But
Pepe is up 7% Don, so you've been T-WAPing it, obviously, your favorite coin.
Oh yes. Pepe is just one of the coins. It's gonna trade like Doge, I think. Used to. Basically, you have a massive pump, and then you get these like 10 to 50% pumps along the way to zero, basically. I'm not a big fan. Like if I had to buy a meme coin, it would be Like, I hate Doge. I think Doge is pretty stupid now. I don't like Pepe. I think there's other more stupid ones.
Harry Potter, Obama.
Yeah, I mean that's one. Like, even though the community fucking hates me, apparently.
Right.
Like, I'd rather buy that. Like, I'm not gonna buy any of them, but I'd rather buy that than any of these crappy kind of old generation meme coins. Because one thing that meme coins do, once they've had their pump, right, and once they had their one cycle, they usually bleed out. And I don't think Pepe is necessarily gonna be different.
Yeah, I think history supports that argument in general, despite what we might want to believe. Solana, could this be a high-low on the weekly? It's trying to carve something out. Had quite a rough ride from 30, pretty much halfway. That's quite a significant decline from that final. I mean, that's almost 50%, which is quite shocking if you think about it. But since then, it's been trying. If you look at CT discourse, it seems like when people talk about next cycle's coins and, not like peak bag holder talk where they just bought a bunch of IDOs hoping they come back, but in terms of sort of, the trader/investor hybrid, maybe 6 to 12 month time horizon, people have started grouping, and this has been the case for a while now, sort of BTC, ETH, and then they add SOL to that category, at least a sufficiently large number of people. Do you share that view? Do you think it deserves, even if it's the riskiest out of the three, to be sort of elevated to that level, or are you on the other side of it, like SBF, VC, coin, whatever? Fuck it.
I mean, I don't even add ETH to Bitcoin.
Fair enough. I forgot how far gone you are. Yeah.
So I mean, for me, it's like, I mean, you can make the argument. Like, I'm down to make the argument that it's Bitcoin, and then there's ETH and SOL down there somewhere. And I mean, I think what I see from SOL, right, the price action that I see, I think is actually interesting. So I'm down to kind of put it on a similar level. Now, it's obviously not on a similar level to ETH, not even close. But the price action that it has is sufficiently interesting for me to kind of be like, okay, it is trading different to the other altcoins, and it's trading surprisingly strong given all the headwinds we have, right? All of that dumping that's basically gonna come down the line from the FTX holdings and all of that. Even though we have all of this kind of coming, price action has been not too bad. It's not been good. If you look at Sol BTC, it's just basically been in the range since FTX imploded, but it's not bad, right? You'd expect much worse. So I'm not a hater. I don't like it at the current point just because the Sol USD chart on the weekly is right at resistance. But if it kind of crawls back above $22, actually starts looking decent. So yeah, I'm not a hater. I'm not the biggest fan. But yeah, we'll see how that continues going.
It's a
I
watch
find it
list one for
interesting.
sure, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah,
yeah.
just the way it trades, right? You just compare it to a lot of other altcoins, and it's just doing its own thing, kind of like ETH, where ETH doesn't really care what other altcoins do. Solana's been in that boat too for a little bit, which is good to see, right? That's something that you want to see, even if it's sometimes stumping harder than other things. As long as it moves differently, it's worth watching, because everything that's kind of like moving in the same direction might as well just take the one that's the most liquid and trade that one. But if you have something that trades differently, there's something else to be done there, which is quite nice. So on the watch list,
definitely for trading, it's a good one, regardless of the multi-cycle proponents, if they're right or wrong. Just the price action is sort of worthwhile on its own. That said, we haven't actually talked about ETH, Don. We started the show, and then you said that everyone's dumb and is sort of conflating the ETH futures ETF with something else, and then wrote them off and told them they're the reason the market's going to dump. But then we just did BTC and altcoins. So let's revisit this misunderstood asset in your view. We can start with the US. You know what? Let's start with the BTC pair, actually.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So this has been trending down for like a year, essentially from 17th October, that lower high, and since then has been lower highs and lower lows. Could this, how high does this weekly have to push to suggest at least the sort of medium-term trend reversal? Because the last time we discussed it, it had obviously broken down from, that 10-week range, however you want to slice it. When it disappeared for a while, sort of in June, sort of late June, early August. And then it started to accelerate. And we talked about the acceleration on Casual Friday last week. But now that obviously is being erased somewhat, especially over the last few days and during the course of this week. If this sort of reclaims the range low, however you want to define it, 061, maybe 063 if you're a perma bear, but basically it's sort of trading through the lows and then coming back up. Is that enough for a medium-term shift in structure? Maybe it's the 064, the last lower high. If it breaks that, you'll be like, okay, there's something here. Or is this in your mind just like a full mispricing, misunderstanding? This is a downtrend. It's bouncing for dumb reasons and it's going to keep bleeding.
I'm kind of in team 2, but
right.
but I'm willing to kind of just be like, okay, I'm just not right at like 0.07.
I'm too smart. The market just hasn't understood what I've understood.
No. I mean, because there's a good chance that I'm wrong, right? I mean, in general, like there's always a chance that you're wrong, and I think it's 0.07. That's quite evident in the price action. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking at. If we get back there and then above it, I'm willing to just kind of take a trade on ETH again. Until then,
that's a humble 12% away, Don.
Yeah, I mean, it's
in
funny
a relative
because
pair.
like 12 sounds so much because we've just been not getting anything, but 12% in crypto is nothing. Like from the bottom against Bitcoin, right? On 2019 bottom versus Bitcoin to the top is 440%. Like if you didn't get 19% of that move, or like 15 or whatever it is, I don't think you'd sleep very poorly, right? So for me, those 15% just whatever. I think if you're gonna break this range to the upside in general, this massive range that we've been in since May 21, I think we're gonna get a double at least from the breakout. So I don't care about the 15%. I'd rather just not buy something into news that I think are bullshit. That has historically been for me some of the worst trading I've done when I'm like, okay, I think this news are bullshit, but I'm gonna buy anyway because price action is good, and then I get dumped on. Usually not fun. So nowadays I at least look for a little bit of like, if the reason that the market goes up is very, very shitty, I usually just tend to stay away.
Poor Don, he's just waiting for a so-called legitimate test of 27.2, 27.4 on BTC resistance. Like, it's grayscale, then it's Sailor. It's like, can we just trade it normally so I can make a decision? It's a funny way of looking at it. But the BTC part makes sense, at least.
Yeah, I just want some actual organic price action.
Non-fraudulent pumps.
Exactly.
Although it has been a bit mental on the intraday timeframes, hasn't it? Like if you look on the hourly or in the 15 minutes, some of these ramps have been pretty insane over the last couple of days.
If I look at ETH BTC on the daily, I like that chart. This is how it has to look to make a nice move. So
just do that for 12 more %.
Yes,
Fair
in general, just get me out of this shitty market and into a good one. And for now, like, I'm not expecting that. And so, like, if I take a trade against that whole premise of mine, then it has to be a good one. And I mean, yes, I will probably miss the bottom, and people will probably make fun of me because there's gonna be a time where I talk poorly about something and then it's bottomed and then it goes up and I buy 10, 15, 20% higher. I'm totally okay with that. It's just how trading goes, really.
You're so brave, Don, for being okay with that.
Yes.
Braver than the troops, for real.
For real.
No, I think that's a reasonable view. Especially when it comes. So I guess the summary version as to what makes you the most skeptical about this pump is that you feel that the narrative for it isn't well supported by facts. So essentially, the market is exaggerating when it comes to the importance of the Ethereum futures ETF at best, and at worst, fully conflating the Ethereum futures ETF and all the other ETF news that we've had. And because of that, pumps on weak news have a higher likelihood of retracing than pumps on real news, or just pumps because people are buying and, just the demand outsizing supply generally. Is that roughly fair?
Yeah, that's roughly it. And at the end of the day, like the only reason why I even hold that view is because my entire premise for the market is that it's going to be shitty, right? So it's easy to kind of get into this whole, okay, weak news, this bullshit news kind of thing, because my whole way of looking at the market right now is that I'm expecting chop. So
And where does that come from then? If that's the bedrock view upon which, if that's the edifice on which everything else is built, where does that come from? Is that a macro thing? Is it a cyclical thing? Is it S&P cope?
No, it's basically like, I mean, crypto went through some of the biggest fraud in in history, right? In the last 2 years. The people are still being jailed. See the intro of this show. As in, like, there's a shitload of stuff that we still need to work through, and it's very likely that that's just going to take a while. And on top of that, we have a very, very weird macro situation in my eyes, with rates going high again. Everything is just kind of, it's different market now, and I think a lot of people just haven't kind of fully come to terms with it, because everyone knows that it's a little bit different now, but I think people just haven't come to terms with it. So it trades in this in between thing to how it used to trade, and how it should trade, and it's exactly somewhere in the middle. And that's kind of where this comes from, as in, like, the crypto space itself is just completely going through a midlife crisis, and the whole macro situation is kind of in a similar boat, where we have to work through some shit before it all becomes clear again, or at least the macro, like as in like the S&P and all the other indices have to kind of push higher to get the whole gold rush feeling back, because I think that's gone somewhat. But people are still clinging to that belief that they had during the gold rush phase, right? Some people are still thinking there's gold to be had, or gold to be bought, or gold to be found, whatever. And I think that's not necessarily the case, as in, like, it's just going to take some while to digest. So it's not necessarily something that, I mean, it's the whole macro thinking isn't necessarily one of my strong suits, but it just makes sense in my head to kind of expect some fuckery, some stupid price action, some players to still blow up that haven't blown up, or to just kind of get what's coming for them. And I think that's going to take a while.
Don to jail. Heard it here first. I mean, I think you're safe, personally. But if you ever do go under, know that I snitched on you 100%. Just the bounty needs to be big enough.
Fair enough.
I don't know what I'm snitching for, but I'll make something up if I have to.
I don't know what that would be for.
10 charges of moral grandstanding, 5 charges of flip-flopping. That should be enough.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had someone in my comments the other day that was like, you've, ever since you've made it in crypto, you've lost sight of the poor man in your comments. And that's why you don't post about the 10x's that you could get in this and that altcoin. And I was like, okay, fair enough.
Oh, geez, yeah.
So I'm guilty of that. Guilty as charged.
It's crazy how you need to explain that now, right? As to why you don't do it. Whereas in the past, it was like, yeah, this person's a big account. They can have an outsized impact on a low liquidity, low cap, low volume project. There's also a high likelihood that because of their social position / influence, the terms on which they get tokens and information is far different than the terms on which a normal secondary buyer would get it. And for those reasons, we used to self-regulate large accounts posting about low caps. Whereas now you can pretty much do anything and no one cares. It doesn't matter. And it's almost the sort of presumption is almost flipped, right? From doing it is presumed bad and shady until proven otherwise. And now it's not doing it means I guess you're an idiot or you're ignorant or I guess you're out of touch. To be fair, you are a bit out of touch, but not to that extent.
I'm definitely out of touch. Like, I mean, I cannot even deny that.
That's why we do this show, folks. Don every week is like, I wonder how the other side is doing. Let me chat to Cred for an hour. Casual Friday was born.
It's kind of like, one thing that I'm most definitely lacking is kind of the interest in what's new. I think that's one of the biggest things where you can kind of find edge and make money in this space, is staying on the bleeding edge and kind of like checking out what's new and what isn't and all that kind of stuff. I don't care enough. This is why I can talk about these coins. Like if Pepe goes up 100x from here, I would not lose a single minute of sleep over it. Like I really don't care. And it's the same with like a lot of the other altcoins. Like they move cool. Like I'm happy for the people holding it. I'm sad for the people that are going to get dumped on. Kind of equals out at the end of the day, and then I'm just like, okay, and I move on. So I don't have that desire to be in the front lines, searching for the new thing at all anymore, and I don't care how they do either. So I think that's something that if you want to like make it from very little, that is something that is useful, right? Like as in you want to be the guy that is kind of going through the Discords, going through the Telegram,
reading docs. Yeah.
Yes, all of that stuff. But I could not be bothered, and I couldn't care less what all of this stuff does. I'm happy to open my chart, look for a trade, take the trade, make my couple percent, and then be happy with it. And I cannot think of anything more dreadful than going in a Discord and having to talk with some community members.
Hello,
like
team. Any updates coming?
I'd just rather not. Like you would have to pay me a lot of money for this, like for me to do it. And then I would still probably not do it. Like I'd do it once or twice and then never show up again. So,
Fair enough. To be fair, like being the sort of washed up boomer type of thing, we've talked about it before. I still generally hold the view that if you want larger risk management, multi-cycle portfolio perspective, cycle perspective, risk management stuff, like the so-called OGs, whatever the fuck that term means, I guess multi-cycle participants are good to look towards. But the other extreme definitely exists in like a negative sense, where someone just takes no time to develop a core strategy or core holdings or sort of any core competencies and spends all of their time just chasing their tails, looking for like whatever that newest thing is without even knowing what they're looking for necessarily. I think that's also very possible. That if you don't build any type of foundation as to, you know, what does my strategy look like? What is a strategy? What's my risk management? Where is my edge, etc. And all you're doing is just like, I don't know, grinding low caps without any thought or process, you can definitely sort of end up on the wrong side of that one as well. It's not like a complete split, right? Oh, lol, these people are the boomers and they suck, and I'm the grinder, so I'm going to make it. You can definitely grind unproductively and sort of grind yourself into the floor doing that as well. There needs to be some rhyme, reason, merit, edge to it, as opposed to just, I don't know, being on deck screener, buying every new thing that comes up.
Yes.
But what would I know about that? Not much is the answer. Let's talk about the S&P.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's been volatile, and on the monthly time frame, it looks like they're trying to rescue it, Don, which would be like at least the conservative version, right? The cluster we used for technical roundup, or one of the clusters, was the 4370 monthly, and the extremity of that, and a level we've discussed before, is the 4310. It looks like 4370 is off the cards, potentially, with 5 hours up, but 4310 looks salvageable. Is that good enough, or do you still think the classic mega high time frame are going to be between, 4 point whatever and 3.6, 3.7? Is that still your view, or could this be enough for a bounce?
I mean, I think this could be enough for a bounce. You could have the next monthly could go to 4.37 again. As in, like, we just bounce basically between the support that we're sitting on right now and the resistance that we're going to make by closing below the cluster. As in, like, we bounce between this tiny support and this big cluster back and forth for a while. Could see that happen. Generally, still think it's very likely to kind of just range. Whether that range is going to be between 3.7 and 4.3, or just in general 4.6 and 3.7, as in like this whole thing just kind of goes sideways for a while, I don't know. But my base case is basically just sideways. It doesn't look as like it could have gone much worse. If it closed like this, it could have closed much worse. Let's put it that way. But it's still not great that the cluster is lost. So it's a little bit of a neutral one. My base case hasn't really changed.
Okay, I think that's pretty fair. I don't really have any other color to add on the S&P. It's the correlation is elusive as ever, and it's very tiring to talk about it in the same way. That hey, the upside, not very sure. Downside, we seem to follow. had this massive rally at the start of the year that we really didn't follow. So your presumption, until proven otherwise, should be that weakness affects us more than strength. That's my view, at the very least, when it comes to the S&P. Dollar has been on a tear, though. You've been paying attention to that.
Oh yeah.
How many green weeks is that in a row? I'm not going to count it all, but that's like a lot. So that doesn't help, right? So as far as risk assets go, dollar up, oil up, sort of expectations for rates high. It's not particularly great. So I guess if you wanted to present some summary version of what your larger macro thing looks like, it would be those two observations put together, right? They're like when risk was strong, we didn't follow, and now you can make a decent case for risk being not as strong into the tail end of this year as opposed to the start of the year. And that, at least, it's at best not helpful, which is a confusing phrase to use, but I think accurate in the circumstances.
Yeah, I think, I mean, someone in my comments actually was writing to me, and it's actually one of the rare nice comments in the last day or two, that the quarterly level that I had helped them ton, which was basically like the 100, like I have a cluster between 107 and 105. Jesus Christ, the 2002 kind of green candle that we used to have on the quarterly, and the support that we've had basically from 2017, January of 2017 on the quarterly. And that's kind of been playing out quite nicely. Like we've been bouncing in between those two. I don't know if you have them on your chart.
107 and 102, did you say?
Yeah, 107. That's kind of like the green candle on all the way on the left side of 2002.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
And then the range high basically between like 2017. I have both clustered, and I expected us to bounce in there, and I still expect us to kind of like just bounce in between those kind of levels. But if it does break out, that starts to look really, really strong, right? So
that's like a trend continuation move above 107. It feels like.
Oh yeah,
it's like from a purely TA whatever. I mean, we are deranged, right? This is quarterly dollar index TA. Like, we have enough self-awareness to know the absurdity of this.
Right, it's actually been playing out.
But it's been, I mean, if it wants to work, I won't look under the hood too closely, you know.
I mean, I was like, that's the funny part. Like, I don't even trade any of this, but I was bullish at like 90 because quarterly support, and then I was like using this whole range quite nicely. I mean, it's been helping me in my crypto trading. But it's really funny because I'm not really a believer in TA on anything that isn't crypto, right? Like I think it can work when everything completely goes crazy, but I think it's not that great when the market is just kind of steady. When the market makes sense and when the world makes sense, I think TA is not that great. When nothing makes sense, and this is why it works so well in crypto, in my opinion, TA is just the last thing that you can fall back on, right? Like nothing makes sense. You're just like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? And this was very evident during the COVID crash, right? Where no one knew what the fuck they were supposed to do, how anything should be valued in this new paradigm. And then everyone used TA again, and it started working really, really well, even in the traditional world. But this, like when you zoom out quite a bit, it tends to be quite nice. Like the horizontal levels, you don't even need that much. And in this case, the quarterly's just been absolutely perfect, actually. I really like it.
Yeah, no, it's been good. Let's just hope we don't have to wait for BTC quarterly levels, because those are slightly more difficult to deal with. But it also makes sense as to why TA starts to, gets more attention when the market goes to shit. Because if you think about other strategies, it's like, okay, I've got an effective sample size of 0, and my backtesting period for my quant strategy is also 0. Great. Like, what the fuck do I do? It kind of just takes away a lot of your, like, sort of takes the carpet from underneath you, and you're left with caveman tool. It's like a big bloody fucking meteor. Is that what they're called? Meteors? Striking the earth. and then you're back to sort of caveman tools and inscriptions and rocks and fire and stuff. And that's kind of what TA is in those circumstances. You know, it's like our normal stuff just doesn't work. It's been taken away, and so we have to go back to basics, bloody lines and triangles. Except you and I just do it all the time because we're not smart enough for the other stuff. Go figure.
No, I think the people that try to be smart in crypto, they just tend to kind of get rolled over. It's because crypto is so dumb and that TA works so well, and that's why I think it's the best tool in crypto. I just don't think it's necessarily true for everything. So I'm in team TA, but very limited in its application.
Team TA brackets self-aware, which is like a rare category within that group.
Because at the end of the day, it's like reading, like it's like horoscopes for men. Like when you think about it, like a random line is not supposed to do anything, but you can use it from time to time in certain circumstances where it actually helps, in my opinion. So yeah,
I feel like you can rationalize a lot of TA to make it feel smarter than it is. Like, say, okay, well, this is just like a level, but actually there was a lot of volume traded at this level, so that there's sort of break-even points for future and past participants. There could be order splitting and unfilled orders left there, or a delta cluster, and, you know, breakdowns and deviations are like trap delta things, which you see come up in quant trading bullshit things. Like, you can make it sound intelligent, but it really doesn't matter, right? Like, it's the same thing. It's the same as when people get obsessed with the specific terminology. Like, oh, this isn't that triangle, it's this triangle. Like, oh, that's not technically a head and shoulders because the right shoulder and the volume. It's like, shut up, dude. You're not a serious fucking person, you know?
No,
like, I just can't deal with that level of pedantry, because what you're implementing just simply isn't sophisticated enough or sensitive enough for those perceived differences to matter. So then it's just you superimposing a degree of rigor that simply doesn't apply or doesn't exist within the paradigm in which you're operating, at least in my view. You're like being too granular with it. It's like saying, okay, well, I'm going to do a set of leg extensions, and if I point my toes out 15 degrees versus 30 degrees, I get this much more or less quad activation. It's like, shut the fuck up, dude. Like, what's going to make the bigger difference? Like, where you point your toes, or just the amount of sets you do and your proximity to failure and other stuff? It's just, I don't know. I feel like it's just a paradise for ADHD, OCD types to pontificate about, as opposed to pointing out something meaningful.
Yeah, I mean, they want to feel smart, basically.
You want to feel smart, yeah. And even with a lot of just pure TA participants, that there's a level of, I don't know, they're just lost because they're not like they're basically like mapping a certain market effect, but the way in which they reach it is like completely erroneous, right? So let's say you have a failed breakdown from like a market structure and specifically a market microstructure point of view. You could point out that there was like a large increase in open interest. There's a lot of delta through that low that was absorbed passively, and now the market's back above that area, so that cluster of delta is trapped. We know that from the open interest there's a lot of fresh positions open up there, and we can then infer that those positions are going to start closing if the market pushes against them, and that could lead to your reversal setup. So you can sort of look under the hood and provide more compelling explanations. But if your explanation is it's market maker manipulation power of 3, like I mean, you're just wrong, right? So this is, I feel like a lot of TA types fall into that camp, essentially, where they sort of unintentionally map and identify a market effect that's real, but misidentify the causation and what actually makes up that market effect completely. But it still, quote unquote, works because they're mapping the same effect, but they don't really understand what they're mapping. I know that's like super all over the place and ranty, but it's kind of worth being aware of. Like, if it works, it works. I mean, you don't have to look under the hood, but it's best to assume that just because something works is for the reason that you think it works. That's probably the most nonsensical portion of Technical Roundup I've ever fumbled through, but that's my best effort at least.
I mean, I love the segment where we, on Technical Roundup, a show about technical analysis, we go over how shit it is. Absolutely love it.
Hey, self-aware, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. Self-aware enough. Speaking of a lack of self-awareness, let's look at some news, Don. Now that we've identified that the ETH pump is a fraud and the market's going to go to zero because nobody is as smart as DonAlt, we can see
everyone is as smart as me.
Three Arrows Capital co-founder Su Zhu apprehended in Singapore. This is for contempt of court. I think he's been jailed for like 3 months or something. Just
4
some
months,
of the more recent stuff I've seen. So this just feels also like a hangover from 2021, 2022, where so many of the king makers and heroes just ended up doing stints in jail. And this just seems like the continuation of that. At one point, there was a surprising, I would say, amount of public support as far as the comeback arc for 3AC via Open Exchange, and that generated some sort of traction on social media. But obviously, Ox and the other exchange-associated tokens, I think, took a dive, understandably, during the course of this news. So yeah, that's just more. I mean, this essentially speaks to what you said earlier, right? In terms of processing a lot of the stuff that went wrong in 2022. The wheels of justice move quite slowly, and it's only really been like a year and a half, 2 years at most, probably a year if you're being conservative in measuring this stuff. So not going anywhere anytime soon. There are also headlines about Gemini and Genesis and sort of more finger pointing there. We're in this, I don't know, reputational churn period, I guess, because the legal system just moves too slowly. And looks like, there's the FTX estate. Honestly, like most of the stuff that screwed us in 2022 is still around in one form or another. It's this big hangover that just won't go away.
Yeah, and I think that's going to take quite a while. And I mean, when you think about it, I think it was last year or the year before, the BitConnect guys got
yes.
And I mean, that was like 2017, right? Like BitConnect went down 2017, 2018. And it took years, and it was the most blatant Ponzi anyone's ever seen, right? And so if we're dealing with that now, we're going to have like 4 or 5 years of basically worse stuff than BitConnect, or like at least on the same level that's coming down the pipeline, even if we don't come up with new scams, right? Because the crypto market always comes up with new scams. But so even if nothing bad happened for the next 4 or 5 years, we still would have enough to entertain the entire space with garbage basically for a few years. Not great.
And we'll still be here talking shit about TA and offering our very important views on the next 2% move in BTC. But yeah, this hangover probably going to be around for a while. SEC moves to again delay spot Bitcoin ETFs from BlackRock, Valkyrie, and Bitwise. So more delays, Don, on the real ETFs. That said, yesterday I had this thought where the delay news came out and the market kind of shrugged it off, at least in comparative/relative terms. And I thought, okay, is this bullish? Should I be buying this? I mean, it happened like a bit late, and I also got logged out of my account. I couldn't be bothered to log back in, which shows you where I'm at mentally, just with life and in general. But I could, if we keep pushing up from here, for example, like Don is wrong and we send, that would be one of those things that you look back on in hindsight and think, okay, well, that was quite telling, right? So I actually think the next couple of days could provide some color with regard to how strong the market is. Because, obviously, if it just shits and bleeds through, then, well, hey, it's just the classic crypto lag. But if we have this ETF delay news and we have a sort of quote-unquote bullshit, as you've described it, narrative to go up, but the market still goes up, I mean, that's got to be worth something, right?
Yeah. I mean,
it's some version of bad news not having a negative impact compared to how it's been in the past.
Yeah, it just needs to go up a little. Like, this area is a bad area. If you get a little bit higher, it starts being okay.
Yeah.
And then I think we can talk about the whole, is this non-reaction? Because at the end of the day, right, that news was also, everyone knew that we're going to get delayed, basically.
Yes, at this point, yes.
The surprise was that they did it so early, because they still had quite a bit of time, and they usually do it last minute. And now they came out and did it very early, which is a little bit odd. So that was the surprise, not necessarily the result of it. But yeah, I do agree. It could have gone, like, price action could have been worse. But then again, I think most people, like most smart people, are actually starting to expect Bitcoin ETF down the line, like very close by, like in the next, at least in the next 12 months. So if anything shakes that belief, I think it's going to have major price impact. If we get the approval, that's going to have major price impact. Anything beyond those two, I think, is just going to be a nothing burger.
Oh, I agree completely. I think at this point, the market's become, I mean, this could age terribly if people, depending on what kind of price action we get, but at least the core market participants at this point seem to be fairly well sensitized to ETF delays. It's kind of like the Binance news, right? Like when the rumor mill started swirling, had a super significant price impact. Whereas at this point, the market just gets tired of rumors after a certain point and wants to see the real thing, whatever version that is. And I feel like we're there with the BlackRock ETF at this point. You might get some intraday vol based on delays, but at this point, I think the big move will be approval or denial. So maybe it's not worth reading into the lack of nuke too much. It could just, the counter argument to that is it's apathy, not relative strength. So something to bear in mind. Vanek, Valkyrie, prepare to offer exposure to Ether futures in ETFs. Don't know if you've heard about this, Don. But yeah, it's a futures-based ETF. Futures have been around for a while. Now it's just an ETF around this well-understood, well-regulated product. And again, there's a significant difference between a spot ETF and a futures ETF. We've had the futures products around for a while. Certainly ETH futures, they're on the CME. They're very sort of, white collar, so to speak. Whereas the spot one is the one that's, well, to be honest, the spot one is just better all around. It's even better, like even if you're completely price agnostic, just for consumers and for market participants, because of the inefficiency of the futures ETF and the rollover costs and poor tracking and the fact that it's not 24/7, so on and so forth, the spot ETF is just a better product. And there was a study somewhere about how much money investors have lost from only having access to futures-based ETFs as opposed to spot ones, and sort of adding up the sum of all those inefficiencies and rollover costs and not tracking the market. It's really expensive not to have a spot ETF. So like purely from a market integrity point of view, even if you're not like, oh, I want ETF because number go up, but like what products do we want to offer market participants from a fairness and integrity point of view? Like it's much easier to make an argument for a spot ETF than against it, I feel like. The counter argument to that is obviously, oh, well, the spot market is big fraud, manipulated, Binance, Tether, no transparency, offshore volume, etc. But I don't know, man. I feel like even if you take all of those arguments, I'm not sure it can offset the harm caused by not having access to these products and instead trapping people either in futures-based ETFs or in fucking GBTC. And we all know how that went.
Yeah, I mean, it's a stupid argument too, right? Like, if the spot market is manipulated, then the future market is going to be manipulated too, right? It's not like you're going to have the futures trading at 40K and the spot market at 20K. That's not how it works. Like, it's just such a dumb argument, in my opinion, that they're making. If you have manipulation, you're going to have it everywhere. So either you do like a Bitcoin ETF, or like an ETH future ETF and a spot ETF, or you don't do any of those two. Like, I just don't agree with the fact that you can have one and not the other. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it's just stupid.
Yeah, it's not great. I guess the strongest version of that argument would be because the futures product is CME based. The likelihood of CME manipulation is much lower than like global spot markets. But then if there were such obvious manipulation, then they wouldn't trade as close as they do to each other, right? Like one of them would be bluffing essentially. So it's just a shit trade-off for everyone involved, and we saw the consequences of it via GBTC and now with the relative costs of these futures ETFs.
Yeah, I mean, it's costing investors.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's a big deal. It's not even like a minor thing where the spot is like marginally better on all these nuances. Like it's materially more expensive and just a worse product. That's the core of it, right? It's just a worse product. Kraken charts TradFi pivot. God, this is a bad headline. Kraken charts TradFi pivot by offering US and UK stock trading, from Bloomberg. So yeah, Kraken getting into stocks. Don, do you think, like, I go back and forth on this. So essentially, when I see crypto companies do like, oh, real world assets, or oh, we're going to do tokenized and access to T-bills for like DeFi treasuries, and oh, we're going to do stock trading, I'm not really sure about the longevity of these products, because most of these businesses just make basically all their money when crypto is doing well. And when crypto is doing well, you don't want to trade anything other than crypto. And when crypto is not doing well, everyone's kind of dead and all these businesses are struggling and the relative volumes aren't there anyway. And also crypto people they won't bridge within crypto, let alone put their money, move their money from crypto to TradFi in like most cases. So I'm not really sure from a longevity point of view whether there's like sufficient, certainly cyclical demand for these types of products. Like, if rates come down and crypto starts doing well again and, the money starts coming back to the crypto casino, I just don't think the vast majority of crypto participants are like kind of multi-strategy punters. And even if they were, I personally would not want to use a crypto exchange to do my TradFi business if I had TradFi business to do. So I've just never been too convinced or sold on these types of all-in-one type multi-asset integrations. What do you think of merging these two?
I mean, I think it's stupid. As long as it's not like significantly better than the alternatives, which it obviously will not be, right? I just don't get the point. Because, like you said, you take crypto risk. If you're on a crypto exchange, you have the risk anyway. So, like, if I want to trade stocks, I would like to have that separated from the crypto risk that I always have, right? As in, like, crypto just nuking to zero. Because if that happens and I have my money on exchange and trade stocks, I don't know how much money I'm going to get back for that, right? I just don't see the point. Like, either you make it so good that it's the place to trade stocks, but then it's not necessarily like a crypto exchange, it's just a stock exchange, or like in general an exchange, but that's very hard to do. There's a reason why, like, I mean, competing with like Robinhood or whatever, it's just they're too small for that, I think. So I don't get the point. I've been pitched on this a lot in DMs and in whatever, everywhere really. Oh yeah, we're gonna have stocks. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan. It doesn't make much sense to me.
I agree. I mean, I can understand kind of looking around for ways to get volume and revenues up, but certainly in the medium and especially long term, I just think if you're crypto, you should mostly stick to crypto. I am a bear when it comes to real world asset type of all-in-one things. So maybe it's that bias speaking. But again, I think the most obvious evidence of that is crypto natives have a problem with bridging. And that's within the same space, right? And now you're going to offer them, as you mentioned, very likely inferior TradFi execution and just more counterparty risk for worse execution. It's hard to make that make sense. This is just I do have an article about MicroStrategy here, but we sort of discussed it. Whoever's doing Saylor's execution, man, they are taking him on a ride. Every single range high is, yeah,
literally. It feels like I'll be hard pressed to find the top that he hasn't bought.
It's really special. Thing is, for him, it's a win-win. For Saylor personally, because he himself was like super rich at this point, right? So if Bitcoin like goes down or fails, or if MicroStrategy fails, like he'll be fine just from personal wealth. Yeah. Whereas if Bitcoin becomes what he envisages for it to become, he becomes like deca-trillionaire legend, right? So I can understand why he's doing it, and this is just like the trade at this point, just MicroStrategy, a Bitcoin holding company essentially. But yeah, I don't really have the same concerns as many when it comes to the centralization, like how much supply they hold. Maybe down the line that becomes a problem. But for now, it's mostly just memeing his execution, and he's still underwater because his average entry is basically the macro range low around 30k. So it's 27,000 according to this article, but more or less the same area. His break even is like a really good resistance level.
Yeah, I mean, he bought at 27, but his average is 29.
Oh, sorry. Yes, you're right. 29,582. Yeah. So I was right. It is pretty much the macro range low, just under 30k. So the Saylor reclaim, you'll have Saylor reclaim plus TA reclaim if we get there, Don. So
I mean, it's literally been resistance, which
it's been really such a good resistance.
I mean, it makes sense too.
It makes complete sense.
There's gonna be a pivot for pretty much forever. And the funny thing is, the more he buys, like when it keeps going lower, like that price moves lower.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll see how that ends up.
Some of the commentary around the low time frame price action has been so bad. Like when you see this, because the TWAP is like pretty sloppy, right? If you wanted to be charitable, you would say that because the market is so dead and volume's so low, whenever someone starts being aggressive, it's going to stand out more than it would ordinarily stand out. I can understand that argument, but it still doesn't feel like it's being executed with any particular sense of nuance or a subtlety. That could be instructions from him, but I doubt he gives a shit. He's probably like 99% ideology, 1% price. But whenever we get this like US spot premium, negative funding because spot is pushing so hard, open interest ramp, CVD up, like all of this, to be honest, CVD isn't up all the time. A lot of it is sort of limit chasing, but whatever, nuances aside, people start thinking that it's like the ETF leaking and that it's insiders buying the ETF. And then they realize it's Sailor and then it mega dumps. But it's funny, like literally for the last 3 weeks, whenever we've had this sort of heavy-handed execution on BTC, every time people have assumed that it's like spot insiders buying, and every time it's been wrong.
Yeah.
It's going to work one time, obviously, but you just have to hope you keep some money in between all those attempts. And some of these intraday full retraces have been pretty rough as well. So something to bear in mind. Like if you're looking at this aggressive type of execution, it's not necessarily the ETF leaking or anything of that nature. Honestly, a lot of the time, it's not even sort of sensitive information or insiders trading. You just get people in this market who execute as apes, and they just stand out more than they normally would because conditions suck so much.
Yep. Well said.
The final bit of news that I have is a bit of a comical / jovial one, because we always end on a doomer note, so I thought to mix it up this week. Aptos and Thaler launch $1 million fund to foster new DeFi protocols.
Bear market
and the fund will scale to 5 million as protocols launch and scale. So the reason I brought this up is, first of all, this is a comical sum given how much specifically Aptos raised. And so this is like not even a drop in the water. Maybe it's a piss in the ocean or something of that nature. However, the real core of what I want to point out here is that when the market's bullish, you can make so much money by scamming these protocols. I don't know if you remember, Luke Martin, venture coinist, had a thread at one point from like the peak of 21 where people were applying for ecosystem grants from all these new L1s with, hundreds of millions, billions, whatever of dollars that popped up. And you could basically ask them money to do anything. And they'd give it to you because they want to come across as having like an active community of, users, developers, and builders. So people hosted like parties and said they were going to build out toys and then just disappeared with the money. And there's just so much money around that no one really cared and no one thought to follow up. But like future bull market advice, not financial advice, not legal advice, don't do this, it's just a joke. But in theory, there's probably some edge and some opportunity to just rinse these overfunded, bloated protocols in like peak bull market conditions and basically get these grants with no strings attached. That is a thing, and I think it'll continue being a thing if the conditions are appropriate. So keep an eye out for those.
Yeah, I like it. Some fraud edge in technical roundup, right?
Have to find edge somewhere, Don. Trading isn't cutting it.
But yeah, I mean, it's funny. The 1 million sum is funny, like you said, with how much money they raised. It's just absurd. Very much bear market things, but is what it is.
Can I go on a really weird tangent just for a second?
Of course.
I find it hilarious, with no specific examples in mind, and I mean that, because of the sheer magnitude and frequency of how this taking place in crypto. But let's say I'm like a prominent KOL social media type account influencer, right? What we've seen over the years, and this has been going on since 2017 at least, is the following pattern. So I leverage my, audience, clout, status, net worth to get like favorable token deals, which are deeply unfavorable for my audience. I basically dump on them. I get caught, and then and by the way, I get caught is like a recent thing with, Zach and whatever. Like the amount of public scrutiny has been going up, and I think that's generally a good thing. But what I've always found absolutely hilarious is how these people, once they're caught, they apologize, but then don't give any of the money back. And I'm like, how is this a real apology? So like you get to keep all the money, and then you arguably even get to buy back some goodwill from idiots who think you're capable of doing no wrong. And so you come out in like arguably better shape than before you were called out. And it's just so shocking. Like the apology has to mean something, right? Like if you made money through these unethical, illicit, maybe illegal means, and then you were caught, and then you concede that you were caught by offering an apology, why is it that you get to keep all the money? Like if that's the case, what downside have you realistically suffered? At that point, the trade-off is I get to make my hundreds of thousands, millions, and then I have to say sorry on social media and people quote retweet and say mean things about me for like a week. And that's like a no-brainer trade-off for everyone. We've seen that with YouTube people, seen it with Twitter people, and I just really struggle to understand it. How people can take the apology seriously if there's no sort of, restitution or a fix to the unjust enrichment. It just makes no sense. You're just letting them win-win again. And the most shocking part is the people who just stand by it nonetheless and say, oh, thank you for apologizing. I knew you were legit. It's like, dude, he's kept your money. Like, the apology doesn't cost anything. It's a really weird sort of psychological phenomenon to observe. So there's that one.
Yeah. I mean, I've come to terms with it that this is just never gonna end, because people are just, I don't know, like, people get sacked, as in they get called out for whatever shit they've done, and then 6 months later their account is still the exact same size, the engagement is still the exact same. Even if you remind people, the only thing that you get for it is basically just hate thrown at you from the fanboys. Nothing changes. It's very tiresome, because that makes the whole industry kind of worse off. When you have these leeches, basically, this is kind of what I think of them, like they're leeches, ecosystem leeches. They sit there, collect money from these shady projects, and then leech, like they suck the blood out of their followers. Basically, they don't have to hit too many, but they just suck the blood out, and that blood would go elsewhere, right? Like, they would be buying like Bitcoin, they would be buying ETH. Everyone else would make more money, and it would actually go into something that isn't gonna just, like, not into a project that is just gonna sell whatever they have and then buy a Lambo with it, but it would actually go into something useful. So you have like these influencer types that just take the money out of the ecosystem, lead some more money into a trap, basically, and remove that from circulation as well. So basically, they're making everyone lose, and for some reason, that's acceptable. I don't understand it. I don't understand why anyone would be following people that have been caught out for it. You do this once, you're, I think, so morally corrupt that your opinion doesn't matter anymore, I think. So I don't get why people are like, oh, I want to listen to this person.
But it makes me so bullish for when I scam. Because at that point I can just be like, but listen, the technical analysis series, that's been free for 7 years and I've been updating it. Look at how many people it's helped. And Technical Roundup, and you like Don, and I do the show with him in the newsletter. I've done so many good things. Like, why are you calling me out? That's gonna be a fun upsell.
Oh, that's gonna be great.
That week's episode of Casual Friday is gonna be particularly good. I feel like, but also God, do I want to get into this? Yeah, sure. Why not? I never really understand how people can have sort of misunderstandings about the team's incentives and priorities when teams hire speculators with no self-professed competencies or experience in like project management or blockchain or whatever to serve important roles on that team itself, right? So like if you're a project and you're thinking, okay, who do I hire for marketing or business development or to bloody help with the website or whatever, how could you possibly in reasonable terms arrive at the answer to this, that, okay, well, a speculator with a large social media following is the best equipped person for this job? And the answer is because that's not in the consideration at all, right? The primary incentive and purpose for that specific hire, the best explanation is that it's sort of token price related. And then that should adjust your priors when it comes to assessing the quote-unquote fundamentals and longevity of the project in general. Like I've said on the show before that one of my favorite 2021 top signals was when a lot of pure speculator types suddenly became like outright VCs, and that was like an amazing signal. But it's also an indictment on the projects that like, what do I think your primary incentives are if, you know, you're sort of prioritizing speculators with large social media followings as your primary hires and putting them in strategic positions? Is it more likely that they're going to be able to offer something meaningful on the project side, or is it just like a short-term gain on the attention, speculation, token price side? And to me, those odds are like so bloody obvious that you should obviously, you know, take with a pinch of salt the content you're seeing from whatever social media figure, but it should also make you doubt the team that they think this is a good hire, or at least make you think twice about what it is they're prioritizing and incentivizing. So yeah, maybe this is why we don't get any deal flow. I mean, I know why I don't get any deal flow. It's because we do a lot of shit together as far as content-wise, and you just fucking hate everyone and morally grandstand everything. So they don't even bother asking me about it. So you've cost me a lot of fucking tokens and advisory positions. Fuck you, basically.
I cannot even deny it.
It's so true, isn't it?
Like, people just absolutely do not want to work with me, which is great. I love it.
I hate it. Please give me your shills.
No, it's great. It's great. Like, I don't know. I just rather not. It seems.
I think that much is obvious, Don. Oh, God. Before I derail the show any further, let's wrap it up. Leave a like on this video if you made it this far. Let us know what your favorite or least favorite part of the show was. If you have any subtle jabs at Don, leave them in the comments. They're always funny to read. If you have them at me, I can't do any worse than I do to myself, so no issues there. Feel free. Show, as always, is brought to you by Woo. We just talked about how shilling was so bad, but hey, we have a sponsor, so we're bad people. But bad people with a good exchange, at least in our conflict of interest biased view. But be sure to check them out. Links available in the description below. Do your own research. Do not keep any more funds than you need with any single centralized service provider in crypto. The whole point of leverage is to reduce counterparty risk. I'm not reading that off a script. I've just done it so many bloody times now that it just rolls off the tongue. But it is actually a real thing. That is what the leverage is there for. And even when you're leverage trading, don't keep it all in one exchange. Split it up. You want to be like a cockroach, especially in this time when we had a big blow up in 2021, 2022. A lot of exchanges are mega down on revenue. We have weird stuff going on in terms of the low caps on Binance. Just be careful, basically. That's all from us. Don, last week someone complained that we didn't get the Don bye-bye, so I'm going to say goodbye, then you say it, and I'm going to stop the recording. Is that cool?
That's cool, yeah.
Okay, thank you for watching, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.